Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. From music to event marketing, we're about to go on a journey, the journey of Daniel Charles, founder of Codarity, as he shares with us the challenges of revenue cycles in the events industry. By partaking of this episode, you'll understand the importance of ideal client personas, the role of automation in marketing, and the need for strategic marketing efforts in our competitive landscape. Let's leave behind the feast-or-famine uncertainty in this episode of Event Experience. We're back with a new episode for you of Event Experience, and I'm excited to tell you just a little bit about today's guest. After scaling events from 60-person venues all the way up to 3,000 plus capacity shows and working in the music industry, our guest today discovered why most event businesses struggle with uncertain revenue cycles. Can we all holler about that? That's very recognizable. Today, he is the founder of Codarity, a marketing agency specializing in the events industry and helping clients add millions in predictable revenue. Emphasis on predictable. I'm thrilled to welcome Daniel Charles to the podcast. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Hey, thank you, Rachel. Great to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And I can't wait to dig into some of the things I just teased out there about your bio. But I'm going to segue now into some get to know you questions so we can know a little bit more about you. So when you are spending a whole day on the event, at an event on the ground, what are your shoes that you're going to be wearing to make sure you get through the day successfully?
This is something I kind of was thinking about. And like, if I'm honest, I like wearing the Chelsea boots because they look smart. But I've got these kind of inner soles in them, so they're really comfy and cushy on the feet. They look smart, but they also kind of have a bit of sturdiness in them as well, so that your feet don't get completely, you don't get flat foot from walking 30,000 steps in a day.
Yeah.
But also as well, if like an unexpected kind of potential person you want to kind of network with or something like that kind of is there, you're kind of still looking the part as well.
Excellent. Very nice. I don't know if we've had Chelsea boots on here before as far as a rec, so this will be really great to include in our, we ask every guest that. So we've got a nice long list of some really good recommendations. Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days that you can't put down, and it doesn't have to be related to events?
Yeah, so I am reading a book called How to Think Like an Emperor, The Art of Stoicism. I'm not massive hardcore Stoicism, but I really love the philosophies behind it. And a lot of it is kind of very much about focusing on what you can control and trying to let go of the rest. And I feel like in this world, everything's so busy. There's a million things going on. I don't know about you and the listeners, but there's a lot going on right every day. It's hard to find the bandwidth sometimes. And so I find that kind of actually just reading that and applying some of that just gives me a lot of calm in the storm. And I'm getting a lot out of it. And been listening, checking up on that philosophy for about sort of 6 years now. And it helped just before 2020 and all those challenges and things. It really helped me see through that. But I've kind of really embodied a lot of that moving forward. And yeah, it's been very rewarding. And
I have a feeling that'll be something a lot of our listeners might want to check out, because if anyone, we're all looking for calm and just something to help us get through. Is there a particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found interesting lately?
Yeah, so there was a really awesome post I saw recently about a guy who I've been following for probably 12 plus years. To be fair, when I first started learning to market events and things, I started following his content. And he's not an event marketer per se. He was just great at what he does. The guy's name's Rand Fishkin. So some people might have known him. But the post was about how he does his content marketing. And the great thing is, it's like he, rather than kind of telling people what they do wrong, and then just going, you're doing this wrong and you should do it like this, he's positioning as genuinely as an advocate for his audience, right? And so it's kind of like showing a lot more about the struggles and the challenges that they have, and then positioning himself as much more of an advocate for that. And then he's basically just letting his case studies, testimonials, and all those kinds of things do the selling on the kind of the bottom of the funnel. He just always has a super fresh approach to everything he does, and it's so cool. He's very smart on kind of industry trends and things like that. But I kind of never really thought about it like that before. But I was like, that's a really interesting take. And yeah, salute to Rand Fishkin. He's always been adding value, and I've learned a lot from him over the years.
Well, I'm going to go follow him after this because maybe I am already, but I'm going to go check it out because I'm always into that stuff too. But thank you so much for that recommendation. Awesome. I'd love to toss it back to you first and give you an opportunity. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Codarity, and just like your kind of what your day-to-day is in the events industry? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. So my name's Dan Charles, and I am the founder of Codarity, and we are a performance marketing agency who specialize specifically on the event services. My background is in music, A&R. I used to do label distribution, which led on to kind of audio engineering and so forth. And naturally from that, I started running my own events where we started scaling from kind of 60-person capacity, small intimate events, all the way up to 3,000 plus productions. That's kind of where I really got to know a lot more about the events industry, and met tons of event pros throughout the years, and kind of realized a lot of them were all struggling with the same thing. They were awesome at what they were doing, but they were really going on a bit of a feast or famine roller coaster. Eventually, I had to stop kind of doing the events because I started a family, and I couldn't really do the kind of 3, 4, 5 in the morning finishes anymore, 4 days a week. So unfortunately, it was a little bit of a unsociable kind of time, especially when you've got little kids and things. So I kind of moved into starting my marketing agency, and that's where I developed the Evergreen Event Profit System. So right now I'm rolling out our free growth readiness assessment, which is an interactive scorecard that event businesses can take. It's kind of like a business diagnostic, as it were, that shows event companies exactly where their growth bottlenecks are and what to tackle first. Ultimately, my bigger vision is to become the go-to performance marketing agency in the events industry, so that creative professionals never really have to worry about seasonal slumps or feast or famine cycles again. The core of it is turning creative excellence into predictable profits.
I think you just that was music to people's ears to be like, oh my gosh, you want to let me actually focus on being a creative event planner versus like, because we all know, everyone listening to this knows, the bottom line is always very important. And that's what we're doing this for, is because revenue is an expectation when you're putting on an event. I do want to dig more into that because I think you just told us a little bit about how you realized this was an issue. But I do want to get into your origin story a little bit first. How did you get started planning productions in the music industry? I'd like to hear a little bit about that, but also then how did you realize, I have a superpower for scaling? And so tell us about how that evolved a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be happy. It was quite interesting how it started, because the place where we were working, we had like A&R distribution, and we were working with all these different artists and labels and basically putting out their music for them. And I managed to scale that up quite well. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. But we wanted ways to promote artists and like local much better. And so we started kind of looking at potentially putting on some events. Some of the artists and acts and people we had on were really well known, so they were quite easy to fill an event with. Some of them weren't, so it was like, right, so there's a big difference here between like having a few hundred people in the event or having no one show up sort of thing. So it was very much well, hey, this was a great success, or ouch, this was no one here. And so I kind of had to learn how to get butts on seats, as it were, and that was the number one thing. And from that, I experimented with things like Facebook ads in the early days and running hundreds of ads and just trying all these different styles, and then not quite knowing why one ad would just work really well and one wouldn't. And then kind of even creating different flyers with quirky angles on the flyers and posters and things like that, kind of guerrilla marketing and things. It really kind of got to that point where I was like, okay, so for the smaller kind of acts and things, there's different angles and quirks that you can kind of promote to make them more interesting. And for the bigger ones, it's just really more about the profit and loss and the balance sheet sort of thing on those ones, making sure it works. Yeah, and that led on to kind of building websites and all kinds of things, and just kind of actually really enjoying it because I got pretty good at it,
I love that you brought up too. I think that's something event planners today always are struggling with too. You just mentioned how, hey, you got a big name, that's going to be an easy draw, and you're not going to have trouble putting, as you said, the butts in the seats. But if you get someone who's maybe like less known, super quality, right? They are wanting to scale up their career and their performance and stuff. And I think event planners too, whether they're working in music industry or something like that, where it's, it's performers, or if they're, working in business conferences and stuff, and they're like, okay, well, what speakers do I get? And you are looking for those like recognizable names. What are the ones that are going to give you an immediate draw? But you also struggle too to say, okay, but we also need some fresh blood, if you will. And like, what if we've got some really knowledgeable people out there that are going to be great? You have to convince people to buy into that, right? You do need to take the risk. Go ahead and buy that ticket. Come and check this person out. You won't be let down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we kind of found was that we would start trying to combine a lot more of these kind of smaller unknowns with the bigger names as well. When we started getting larger budgets and things, we couldn't really do that at the very beginning at all. So we had to do that quite systematically and strategically. But what we found was that we could actually be a bit more of an authority because we were bringing these acts and bands and kind of artists and things forward to people where they would be starting to really trust. They go, well, I know this person, so I'm going to have a great time either way. But what I actually really like is discovering the new talent and the up and coming and things like that, And so that allowed us to hedge our bets in a lot of ways and be a trusted source of events in our space, which was pretty rewarding,
That's super smart way to do it too. It's like bring the receipts, right? And pretty much at anything, you're trying to convince anybody of anything. If you have that trust and credibility, that's going to get you a long way. But you really saw the need and the benefit. Let's build that trust then using the known quantities, which help to get you the trust you needed for the more unknown quantities and stuff. And that segues nicely actually into my next question. One of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is because you brought something up in your bio that I think we're all familiar with. And if the last 5 years, and I'm just talking 5 years, y'all, we all know what's happened in the last 5 years, 2020 to 2025. Okay. If the last 5 years have reminded us of anything, it's the fact of feast or famine revenue cycles. It's either raining, it's, if it doesn't rain, it's not raining, it's pouring, or it's a, desert, it's a drought. And events, as our audience well knows, are meant to generate revenue for the brands that execute them in spite of feast or famine. Can you share with us your approach for managing the uncertainty of revenue cycles? Like how it's a super, I already mentioned risky. It feels risky and it can feel very, not just uncertain, but scary for people, especially if you're an event planner. You're like, okay, I hope this works. Yeah. And I kind of feel like your approach might be able to take some of that uncertainty out of the equation for us. So what's your approach to manage that uncertainty in revenue cycles?
Yeah, so one of the key things we come across a lot when we're talking to new clients who are potentially interested in building out these types of systems and things is that they are in those cycles of feast or famine where they have the quiet seasons and the busy seasons. And naturally, that's kind of a bit of a chicken and egg scenario because you're really busy. You're like, blinkers are on. I need to just do the work, logistics. And I completely understand that because it's like 1,000 things going on at once. There always is. But then because of that busy season, it's very hard to put the time and the effort and the attention into things like that, marketing and all those types of things as well. And so then when they inevitably go into a quieter season, it's already almost too late, at that point, because with events, there's often longer sales cycles, a lot more competition, especially kind of when you're looking at the corporate side. We work with a lot of kind of event agencies and audiovisual companies, event planners and things who work on the corporate side. It can be a 12-month plus sales cycle. A lead can come in on January the 1st, 2025 for something in December 2025. And that is quite common. Yeah. So in November, you're quiet. You're not going to catch that corporate lead from January because they've already got everything planned, you see. So it's a case of kind of looking at understanding that marketing windows need to be much wider and longer than they often are for event agencies. And a lot of event agencies and event services, they tend to kind of use, for example, events and things that they've put on as their kind of news cycle, as it were. Yeah. That's great. And you definitely want to be showcasing that. But the key I find is to have some form of evergreen approach, which is like a flywheel, which can be 365 days a year, not just like quiet season, 365 days a year, where it can be running ads for you around the clock sort of thing. You could be continuously publishing content on your website, blog posts. You could be doing kind of PR and outreach and things like that. And then having systems which can kind of capture that interest and convert it into leads earlier rather than later. My goal is to capture them whilst they're right out there in the blue ocean, months and months before they're even really thinking, because ultimately that positions event companies at more strategically, rather than an order taker at the last minute. And we know order taking is kind of like cut the price, do everything you can to get the deal across the table, and then you're like and then you're dumping it on your team and being like, right, so we've got this event and we've got virtually no money at all, but we need to kind of make it work. And then the team's getting burnt out and stuff like that, which no one really wants. So if you're in the conversation way, way earlier, you are positioning yourself more strategically, and therefore there's more opportunity to talk about services. You can build your pipeline over a much longer period of time. And ultimately, that's kind of how I sort of see it. And that's kind of what the methodology is, to just actually have a system which can work for you 365 days a year. And therefore, when you get busy, it continues to work because you kind of got the momentum. And then when you're quiet, you're super grateful for it, because it's actually still bringing in leads and nurturing people through your pipeline.
That makes a ton of sense. It is something I think we've heard on this podcast too from other guests, and even on Bizzabo's webinars as well, where gone are the days where if you just had maybe one or two big events, pillar events you're doing in the year, you're kind of treating those like, oh, well, it's all around this. And then people I'll just let it sit, set it and forget it. And you don't really come back to it. And that thinking is out the window, because as you said, the competition is fierce out there. You really do need to be in the hearts and minds of those attendees and those leads every day of the year. I have a follow-up question with that too, because it's like, how much does automation, because my immediate thought was like, okay, I'm thinking of like an event team, maybe they're real lean, maybe they don't have a ton of budget. And obviously we do want to do that, implement that 365 year-round approach. But I'm thinking of like the event planner out there is like, okay, so you're saying email marketing. That means I've got to write these emails. How much of this can be automated, where it's like you set up the system and now it's kind of, like you said, running there for you, even whether you're busy or you're slow? Does that figure in? And kind of like, what's your best advice for that kind of approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely get when I'm saying this, it's just like, they're like, wow, this just sounds like loads of work. And
right.
and I do need more work right now, so I completely get that. I completely do. But yeah, automation plays a really big part in this, because ultimately the way we kind of look at it is, as you're kind of collecting that collateral from those kind of events and things like that, and you're getting those case studies and things like that, yes, it does require putting some time aside to kind of turn that into something which is useful. But if you can create things like, nurture sequences and things like that, which can just be one email per week for 52 weeks of the year, that's one thing where it's like, this is, and ideally those emails need to be of value, not just, hey, look at us, we won an award or whatever. That's fine. But it needs to be more around like, client X had A, B, and C problem. We solved that problem with Y, and this was Z, the outcome kind of thing, those kind of things. Because ultimately there's going to be people who are always coming in and out of those challenges throughout the year. And so you're kind of being able to talk to them about how you helped with this specific thing. And so naturally with AI and things like that, you can absolutely scale up a lot of kind of content and ads and all these types of things now. So it does really help to kind of know how to use some of those tools. But one thing I would suggest, and this is a bit of a hack for people to kind of get stuff out, is if you dedicate, say, half a day or something like that, and you go to any AI system or anything like that, and I'm giving away some secrets here.
I love it.
I haven't told anyone else this yet, but
okay, cool.
But basically it works really well. What you can do is you can go to, we use Claude, but you can go to any of them and you go like, hey, you explain to it exactly what you do, what your business does. You spend a bit of time giving it loads of context around your business, your ideal clients, and all these kinds of things. And then you can go, what I want you to do is I want you to interview me as if you were an investigative journalist, one question at a time, and feel free to go down a rabbit hole if you feel it's worthwhile to my ideal audience. otherwise stay on topic. And you can even transcribe it and things like that straight in. And you can ask 5, 10, 15 questions, say half an hour or so back and forth. And then you can ask it to basically consolidate all this down, and it can actually create a plan, and it can pick out your voice from that as well, how you speak naturally, right? So you're not AIing just ChatGPT 3 tips for blah, blah, blah. It's genuinely you. And then it can scale that out into all sorts of email marketing, kind of ads, pain points, angles. Like you could get an absolute ton of really good, valuable content, which is unique to you and your own perspective. And so we do that with our clients when they first come on. We just basically interview them and go through this entire piece. And then we have other systems for producing the content and stuff. But that can get you a massive way across the line. We see it just great because authenticity is so important these days, I feel, with AI and stuff like that. Yes, AI is staying, but it can help you kind of build out that kind of automation. Like it could help you create a 52 email sequence from an interview like that.
Wow.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
That's super. Oh, thank you for spilling that tea. It's funny because like I've even been, talking to the Bizzabo content team too, and we know AI, there's appetite for AI. We know we're all mandated to use it, but and even then it gets back to what you're saying. We need to have this all year long, every day of the year approach to generating and, creating that buzz, nurturing those leads, cold, warm, hot, whatever, around our events, through our events, beyond our events, and just all that time. And again, how are we finding the time, the resources to do that? But that was a great hack. Thank you for sharing that. I'm even thinking like beyond events, I'm like, I could use that for some other stuff too. Yeah. I just feel like our brains can't really, some of us might still be trying to comprehend all the things that are possible with technology. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're an event tech company, Bizzabo is. And so we're always like, yeah, what else can we add that can help in our platform? Super insightful. Thank you for that. We'll be right back with more event experience after the break. Event enthusiasts, are you hungry for the latest event trends and insights? Pop open your laptop, pull up your favorite browser, and head to the Bizzabo blog. That's bizzabo.com/blog for fresh perspectives and expert takes on what's shaping the world of events. Plus, subscribe to get blog updates sent to your inbox every 2 weeks and never miss an article from bizzabo.com/blog. Do more that matters with Bizzabo. We're back with Daniel Charles for real talk about what event planners should not be doing these days. One other thing that drew me to you as a guest for the show is your willingness to admit mistakes that helped you learn along the way. There's something we can learn from. I love it. I think we all love when people are like, I did this wrong, and don't do what I did. Do it better and righter the next time. Any practices and efforts that you would discourage for our event planner listeners based on your experience?
Yeah, so we get quite a few people who come through and they have specific problems and things like that, and a lot of the time fall in a few different areas. One of them is just relying purely on referrals and word of mouth. And I absolutely love them. I am not bashing referrals at all. They are fantastic, right? Everyone loves hey, Rachel, meet Dan. He can help you with X, Y, and Z. No one's bashing that at all. But with the economy and everything's so turbulent these days, people are turning over, people are moving in and out of companies and things like that all the time. And we've had clients where 50% of their revenue was from one big client, right? And then the person at that company moved, and then the new person came in, changed things up, and then, we're not going to work with you anymore. We're going a different direction. Half the client's revenue in a blink of an eye, And so, they were referring work for years, and he was just heavily reliant on just that kind of business to kind of keep him topped over. It's kind of like really, again, treating that marketing as an afterthought. It's like, I'm getting some referrals and stuff. I can just rely on those. And you should always be nurturing referrals, but just relying on those, especially nowadays, it's very, very risky in my opinion. I feel like a few other things are just, we work with some big agencies and things who've come on, and we go, okay, cool. So have you got any kind of like metrics on what's kind of been working in the past for you? And they're like, we have a spreadsheet, which is kind of like got a few rows of stuff, but we think it might be out of date, or we're not quite sure. The team doesn't quite know how to use it, and it gets updated every now and again. And we're like, right, okay, you're doing 7 figures and you're using a spreadsheet to track,
right?
So just having even some very fundamental tracking in place of where things are coming from, what kind of happened to attract these kind of people. Did they turn into recurring business and things like that? And you could do that with a spreadsheet, but if you're going to do it with a spreadsheet, just try and get a bit of a system in place for it, right? Get it regularly updated on a weekly basis, have a few columns with maybe some statuses and drop downs and things like that as a bare minimum. But if you're doing any kind of advertising at all, we've seen clients who've spent like multiple thousands of pounds on things like Google Ads and not had any tracking in place at all. And they're like, oh, we get some leads, we get some really bad ones, we get some great ones. Don't really know which ones are which.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. So it's kind of, and that stuff's a pain. Like, no one likes it. It sucks to have to do that, you know. But I think one of the things is with a lot of event people is they're quite creative. Some of them want to step away from the analytical side of things, and some of them love the analytical and don't like the creative. The way I see it is we kind of all need to be a bit left brain, right brained on this kind of thing. And ultimately that's some areas where I see big opportunities for event businesses to just get way better insights, because then they're like, oh, okay, well, this one thing's working really well, so I can keep working on that and do my referrals and just keep working on this thing. I suppose one other thing is as well, without going down a complete rabbit hole here, is we speak to a lot of people who kind of come through and they don't really know who their ideal client persona is.
Right.
So it's, you know, they're like, we can do any kind of event for any kind of business, right? And I'm like, okay, awesome. But the problem is, if you're kind of everything to everyone, then you're kind of nothing to no one as well. And so I just say, ultimately, just really try and build out a really clear, ideal client persona. And if you position all your messaging towards that ideal client persona, you will attract other people in as well. That's just the nature of the internet and marketing and so forth as well. But if you're promoting through that filter first, you will get a lot more of your actual ideal clients coming through, and it does deter the kind of the tire kickers and the people who you're not going to be profitable on. And it's the same goes for when you're kind of promoting events for, you know, selling tickets and all those types of things as well. Just absolutely understanding your ideal client is critical these days. Again, AI and stuff can help with all those kind of things, but I would say many event businesses don't even have a definition of their ideal client.
That might come as a surprise when you say it, but I mean, I'd be interested to like even poll some of our listeners of this show who might be like, yeah, I try to get this all the time maybe, and we have a really hard time like nailing it down. And a lot of that sometimes can come from that anxiety, especially people who don't get marketing and maybe aren't tracking as adeptly as you mentioned too. And those are all really great points. I so appreciate that, because it's like you literally are trying to throw a dart at a dartboard that's a whole room, and you're like, yes, but are you hitting the target you want to hit? Where is the target? You know, it's like you could be hitting across the room from the actual target you want to be hitting, and like that person's never going to buy from you. You're not actually marketing to everyone. You're not actually trying to get every kind of attendee to come to your event. You have a very specific one in mind. Sales teams can help with that, you know, and be like, no, I can tell you. I love that you mentioned that too, where like you've got one big client that's like your whole half your revenue, and if that person at that brand leaves, that is now in question and probably going away. Well, go look at that person then. What kind of person was that? Was that, you know, what was their persona? What was their demographics? What kind of business was that? You know, what was their annual revenue? What industry were they in? Start painting that picture. But such good tips. I have a feeling a lot of our event planners are like, yes, we want all of these things, and this will help a ton. And I really appreciate too the left brain, right brain thing too. I always think of it, I'm not an event planner per se. I work in marketing, but that creativity, that balance between creativity and analysis is always there, where you're like, I've got a great idea. Well, then your next instinct should be, great, I want to prove it was a great idea. So I'm going to put it out there, but we're going to track the crap out of it to make sure that it was like, can I prove that it was good? Or it's like, oh no, I was the only one that thought it was good. You know, so it's really important to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, okay, again, speaking, I'm a marketing person, and we're talking about events. A lot of what you've shared about being able to scale these events does have a lot to do with marketing and tracking and really knowing how to get the word out, how to nurture, how to target the right people for these events. As we look at all of the traditional and even out of the box marketing efforts that we all like to use or hack our way through and use on repeat. Is there anything that you think event planners and marketers should stop doing or stop using because it just doesn't work anymore? I'll give an example. I worked for a company years ago, and the internet was alive and well, and had been for a while. And the CEO of this company was convinced that the marketing team, we needed to plan a webinar where we were going to invite journalists to come and listen to the CEO talk about how awesome the company was and what they were doing. And we had to explain to the CEO, that is not how journalists work anymore. You have to serve them a story on a silver platter. They are not coming to a webinar to hear you rave about how awesome you are, and they're going to make a story out of that. We're dealing with someone who's like, well, that's the way we did it, and it worked, and not recognizing that doesn't work anymore because that's not how this works anymore. And if the answer is no, I mean, listen, because I think the answer to this might be it depends, but that's kind of where it's going, because it can be so easy talking about bandwidth and resources to set it and forget it. Be like, well, this is what we've always done. We've done this for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Well, that is a different world than it is today. Yeah. Is there anything that you see in like the marketing or, scaling things up that do you think people are doing that's like, why are you all still doing that? That doesn't work anymore. That's not how the world works anymore. Yeah. Anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a client a while ago when we kind of first brought them on board. They were relying really heavily on cold outbound only, and they had a really big sales team of like SDRs and kind of sales reps and stuff. And it was just pound the phone all day, every day, 100 dials, smile and dial, and just calling all these businesses. Now, there isn't that many event businesses out there, right? They're compared to other, compared to like mortgage brokers or plumbers and things like that, right? The total addressable market isn't as big as other ones where you can just absolutely volume. Yeah. And so their solution at the time was to just bring on more SDRs to do more cold calling, more cold email and all these kinds of things. And their CEO at the time was like, no, like SEO, content, ads, none of that's going to work at all. Like, no. It's all direct to, find a decision maker, call them, pitch them and stuff like that. Wow. But the sales director and head of marketing, they really they were like, look, we're burning out. We're scaling the team and we're not getting any better results here. This is kind of crazy. We're just spending loads of money on this. And it's not saying cold outbound and stuff like that doesn't work, because it absolutely does, but it just needs to be a lot more strategic. I mean, I do cold outbound. I know many clients and agencies who do, right? Yeah. But the way we kind of positioned it was, okay, again, if you had an ideal client persona, what would that client look like? So we kind of profiled that. And then the CEO was like, yeah, I can get on board with that. If we had 5 or 10 of those a quarter coming to us, we would be in a good place. So we just basically started creating content as a kind of a very small trial. They're a big agency, but as a small trial, we started creating content around the problems that ideal client persona had. This was kind of like before AI and stuff. So it was like Google still is massive, like no discrediting that at all. But it was quite easy to kind of rank for like long tail keywords and things like that. And we went really, really prescriptive with these keywords. It was kind of like very descriptive with the types of problems and things. And we just created all these articles, and CEO was like, I don't think this is going to work. We kept going for 3 to 6 months or so and saw these rankings approach, and we were getting 5-10 hits a month on a blog post, right? Not much per kind of blog post. And then the first lead comes through from it. And then they kind of, nice. Okay, it's a 6-figure event, like, from one blog post sort of thing. And he said, like, specifically, I read this article. I forgive me, it was quite a while ago, I can't remember, but I read the article. And it really resonated with me, your approach and your solution to that problem and how you would tackle that. So I wanted to have a chat with you. And naturally, that converted into a 6-figure deal. So that was like a 30x ROI on everything they spent with us in one go.
Oh, wow.
And the CEO was very much like, like, could we scale this up a bit? And I'm like, yeah, you can absolutely scale this up, right? So then I kind of gave him a longer term strategy. We scaled that up and it worked massively. It was so great. And they continue to kind of get more and more kind of qualified leads. And as a result, they were able to scale down the SDR,
Nice.
and we were able to build content that supported their sales team as well, and kind of help their sales team actually go, oh, that's great. Yeah, our CEO actually had a really great idea about that specific problem you had, Mr. Potential Client. And you can absolutely do the same on the event ticket side of things as well. If you're trying to bring people in, like, for example, if it's a conference, for example, they might have specific kind of exhibitors or brands and stuff who solve specific problems. So you can kind of create content around those types of things and use that as collateral, But yeah, that was quite a good turning moment there. I was like, no, just trust the process. I know it's going to work.
Well, and I like that you said too, I mean, this goes back to the sales cycle can be very long on events and stuff like that. But obviously, they were trying something that wasn't really working. It's not to say that a cold outbound doesn't work, but you should be measuring that. Again, it can be one person, a decision maker, be like, nope, this is what's going to work. And we just go with that. But thankfully, there was that openness to say, well, let's try this too and see which one's working better. And then, like we said, the receipts came through and they didn't lie. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's just something to think about too. Like if it's not working for you, if it's actually not working, even though it worked in the past, you always need to be iterating and analyzing, like, what are we doing and what's working best, and then stop maybe doing as much the thing that doesn't work. Finally, easiest question of all, where can our listeners find and follow you and Codarity online?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me mainly on LinkedIn. That's my kind of primary channel, just /Dan Charles. You can find me on there at Dan Charles, I believe it is on LinkedIn. And you can check out our website as well, which is codarity.com. That's CODARITY.com. I try and put out regular, useful kind of blog content, like with frameworks and useful insights and things like that on there on a regular basis. And you can learn more about our agency and what we do. You can follow me on the other kind of channels and things as well, but LinkedIn and the website are definitely the best places to find the most info about me and what we do.
And is that that assessment that you mentioned at the top of the show, is that available on your website as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see some call to action buttons throughout the site, kind of like you can get started where you can book a call, or you can opt in for the assessment. And the great thing about the assessment is it takes about 3 minutes. So you can kind of jump in there, and yeah, it's interactive, and I've had loads of people say it's really quite fun and engaging sort of thing.
Nice.
And it will give you a breakdown of kind of where you might be struggling, where you're doing well, and kind of give you some guidance on specifically what you could be doing to kind of move on to the next steps. Yeah, you get a nice score and a kind of a breakdown on all of those different sections. It's about 15 questions, I believe it is. And yeah, you get it instantly, which is quite fun. So 3 minutes, fill out the questions, instant results.
To skill up your event experience, Dan is adamant that we should really and truly know our customers.
The number one thing is really just know your customer better than anyone else can know your customer. And it kind of goes back to that ICP, the profiling piece like that. But if you genuinely put your time, energy, and resources into understanding your ideal customer better than anyone else, their problems, their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, what their goals are, what their lives look like. Not to the point of stalkerish. I'm not saying go knock on their door and ask what they have for dinner.
At least not so they know.
But yeah, exactly. But, are they luxury shoppers? Do they believe in kind of expensive brands? Do they kind of travel a lot? Do they kind of spend a lot of time in hotels? Like, all these kinds of things can really help you paint a very clear picture of them. And because of that, when it comes to creating kind of content and things like that, where you ideally want to stand out from the crowd, authenticity is there because you're coming from your genuine self, and then you can kind of talk to them on a level like, hey, look, I get you. I've been there. This is the challenge I see that you're probably facing as well. This is how I specifically kind of solved it. I hope it helps. Kind of thing.
Thanks again to Daniel Charles for joining us on Event Experience, and thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear about it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.